Natsista na ameahnet na hishivi. Zita hidans of his stoms. Isatsista. Ibo wina if. I was born here at Concho, the Indian hospital. My early childhood was spent in Watanga.
My name is Gerald Chavez. I am a Pueblo, native Pueblo in New Mexico, the Cochiti tribe. I am also a deacon with the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, which I serve. I was ordained a deacon in 2009, and that is how our family serves the Lord.
We have 3 children. Karen Vanhaya is her Cheyenne name. Deborah Hikawana is her Cheyenne name. And our son, Marty, and Nakos is his name. In 1945, when I was 5 years old, I came to Concho boarding school. And I spent 9 years at the boarding school. I didn't know a word of English because Cheyenne was the only language spoken in the home. And when I came to Concho school, getting ready to go to school at 5 years old, not understanding the English that was being spoken in the classroom, I spent a lot of time just listening and not speaking until I was able to pick up the English language. And at that time, we weren't even allowed to speak our own language in the school. So as a result, a lot of children lost their ability to speak Cheyenne or Arapaho because we were punished if we were caught talking our language. So there was a whole generation there of children that lost their language and a lot of their traditional ways that they were taught before they came to this school. In 1953, my grandparents had written to my parents of some of the things that I had complained about to my grandparents, about the punishments and things that were going on at the school. I didn't realize it until I left the school area that they had emotionally beaten us down so much that I didn't understand that my self-esteem was at a very low point because of the things we would hear about us being Native children. I had one teacher that said to a small group of us girls, I don't know if I should say this, but well, it's true, it happened. You're nothing but a bunch of dirty, lazy Indian kids. Nobody cares about you. Not even your parents, that's why you're here. Now that really struck a deep emotional pain for me, to think that my parents knew of the cruelty, emotional cruelty, verbal cruelty that we were going through. So when my mother found out about it, they came in December of '53 to take me home for Christmas. But they took me back to Colorado to live with them. And after I felt we were in a safe environment, then I could tell my parents of the punishments we went through at the school. Being back with my parents and not having to be afraid of speaking, not being afraid of your communication. And my parents speaking to me and telling me that I didn't need to be afraid anymore. I was in a safe place with them. And just being able to hear the Cheyenne language again and not having people yelling at you just for being who you really are. And helping them to rebuild, self-esteem and being proud of who I am, a Cheyenne person.
Are you proud now?
Yes. Still real emotional. A lot of people don't understand what we went through. And as a result, we have a whole generation of people who are lost because of their language and have lost a lot of their tradition, because language has a lot to do, plays a big part in our tradition. Like, for instance, we go to the Sundance and we have a camp crier to let everyone know what's going on. And he speaks only in Cheyenne. And to be in a camp where I'm the only one that can understand. And the younger kids, the younger people will be asking me, what is he saying? What is he telling us, Those people didn't realize how important our language was to us. That we need our language to understand, to keep our traditions and our language alive, and to see how it's lost today. Before my parents came for me, this was back in 1952, I was still at the school, and it was a movie afternoon, like on a Saturday afternoon. And we were all in the gymnasium of the school watching the movie. And the movie was about U.S. soldiers, and they were on their way to attack an Indian village. And there were teepees and all that, something that we could identify with. As the soldiers start to advance the camp in the movie, and the Indian people started to run, the soldiers started shooting at them, killing them. And all the kids were yelling and cheering. They were cheering. We were cheering for the soldiers. When all of a sudden something snapped in me, and I stood up and I said, "Stop it! They're killing us." And I ran out of the gym. Then when my parents came for me in 1953, and we talked about it, and I told them what had happened, and my dad said, "I didn't realize that you kids were being brainwashed into thinking that it was bad to be Indian." My parents worked together and just speaking the language at home so that I could hear it. understand it and to learn the language back. I went to school in Bayfield, Colorado. And when my father retired from his job that he had there, we came back to Oklahoma. We came back to Watonga. That was where my mother is originally from. And I spent maybe about a year or so back in Watonga and didn't really have the training or the education to get a meaningful job, you know, besides working fast food place or whatever. And besides, there weren't that many jobs around Watonga. So I came to Concho and I signed up for relocation to go to school to get, you know, further training and education. And I was sent to Chicago, Illinois on this relocation program. And when I was there, I met Gerald.
This was way back in 1963 when I met Opal. I immediately knew that Opal was going to be my future wife. We were both going to school with the program that the government had called relocation. We used to get stipends of $25 a week to get us through the week. We had to pay we stayed at the YMCA in Chicago and we had to pay our rent from that $25, our meals, transportation. That $25 was supposed to take care of all that. So me and Opal used to combine our funds to be able to survive in that area. To us, it was a total culture shock, I guess you might say, living in Chicago. Both of us were supposed to go to Dallas, Texas in the first place to go for training. Both programs that we're supposed to go to were both filled. So consequently, we both got sent to Chicago, and that's where we met. That was actually what it was, to relocate you to another area to get special training to get a job. In my case, it was to train as a court reporter. And Opal was there to train for business administration. So in that area, we consequently at the time finished. But in the meantime, when we were still going to school, we decided at that time that I asked her that one day, Opal, do you think we should go ahead and get married? This was only 3 months after we had met. And she agreed. So this one day we took off from school, went to the courthouse, got our certificate, and got married. After we got married, we decided, what shall we do? So we went to a small place where they had pizza, and that was our
wedding day feast.
Our wedding day
Feast.
celebration.
Just
So anyway, before that time, when I asked her to marry me, we didn't have any rings or anything to give to Opal. So we went to a place called, was it Walgreens?
No, Woolworth.
Woolworth. Went in there and I purchased a ring there for 99 cents. So then when we got married, that's when I placed that ring on her. It must have been a pretty good ring because it never turned green on her finger. That was the beginning of our marriage. And it has now been 51 years. Matter of fact, last year, April, a lot of the people that we knew wanted to celebrate our, 50 years of marriage here in Oklahoma. So what they did, they gathered headmen, dancers, head singers, cooks, and everybody else. And they celebrated our wedding anniversary here at Concho.
Mm-hmm. In 2005, I was hired by Ted Turner Network and DreamWorks Television to learn some Cheyenne, to be able to teach small phrases to 3 actors that were playing Cheyenne parts in a movie. And I came home, I was all excited and told Gerald that I heard some Cheyenne phrases that I felt so good inside to be able to say. And one of the phrases I heard in that movie was when they were talking about the military soldiers. And one of the men said, "These glass-eyed people don't know how to act, or they act like buffalo who have lost their mind." And I thought that was a real neat phrase, and it goes like this. Ika wuksihas that's isawan zasa iba hinno says inhishino. They look like buffalo who have lost their minds. And when I saw some of the other Cheyenne phrases that were in that movie, I would come home and practice saying them, because before that I wasn't able to really make sentences. I could hear it in my mind, but for it to come out was very difficult. Cheyenne is very important, and people that live in an area where they have access to the language, in hearing it, speaking it, writing it, they should really try to take an interest in reviving the Cheyenne language, because I know when I come home, I can be around people that are younger than me, that don't even understand what is being said. And it's generations older than me that I'm able to sit and talk with. And there's not that many elder, fluent Cheyenne-speaking people left. I recently heard about a DVD program that is available of the New Testament. And I spoke to a person in Northern Cheyenne if he could look for it for me and let me know so that I can purchase it and listen to the New Testament that's all spoken in Cheyenne. and I'm pretty sure that's going to be very beneficial to me. A lot of younger people that are going to see this video will probably think, wow, they only knew each other 3 months and they got married. But you have to remember that it was a whole different time in the 50s and early 60s. You didn't really hear of people cohabitating, and marriage then was still a very a sacred union between two people. It wasn't taken as lightly as it is now. In fact, looking at family relatives back at that time, grandparents and all, you didn't hear of that much divorce. People stayed together, and like it was expected that once you got married, that marriage would last your lifetime. So even though Gerald and I only knew each other for 3 months, I knew that we wouldn't just say, well, let's just go off and live together, Well, way back, like in my grandparents' time, where women did not go anywhere alone with a male, they were always, they didn't go off with a male unescorted. The young women were always escorted. Family Cheyenne traditions was really strong back then, where male and female couldn't just be alone together. Like I said, the women always had escorts, and same going into the early part of my mother's upbringing. And they always talked about it. They always talked about you can't just go and live with somebody, So apparently Gerald and I probably discussed this, and that's when he asked me to marry him. So we got married, and when I came home, then of course I had instructions from my mother and my aunts, on my husband being from a different tribe. He's gonna take you to where he's from to live, and raise your family and all. You must always remember how you were brought up to respect. Respect is a theme that was really strong at that time, but coming down to some of the younger generations now, that respect might as well be a foreign word that they've lost the meaning and action of respect. We stayed in Chicago after we got married from 63 to December of 71. And Gerald, tell him what happened about you got a letter from the governor.
Well, at that time, I had been working for one of the railroad companies there in Chicago, and this one day I got a letter from the governor of Cochiti, Pueblo, asking me if I wanted a home to have it built in Cochiti. You have to be here to work and build that home, helping the hot people in that area.
Mutual help.
It was called Mutual Help. And you need to be there to help with the building of the home and everything else, the house. And consequently, when the governor asked me about that, of course I responded, sure, I want to come home and build a home in Cochiti. And that's when we came back to New Mexico. And that's how we got our home.
Communication is the bloodline of any relationship, and they must learn to communicate respectfully to one another. People, I notice in this fast-paced society we have now, people have learned not to speak with one another. They speak at one another, or they speak to one another. But I think the main part of communication is being able to speak with one another. In my own family, growing up, communication was not done harshly. You know, there was always respect and listening, being able to listen when someone is speaking. When my grandfather spoke, we all listened, sat and listened. And when my father spoke, we all sat and listened. We must be able to forgive one another. We are two separate people in a relationship together. And we're not perfect. We make mistakes. So we must be able to, with love, learn to forgive one another for our weaknesses.